Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Alyssa Chu, founder and CEO of Anchor Taiwan, also your host and curator of the forum today. We focus on ecosystem building and venture capital for cross-border innovation. It is with tremendous pleasure and honor to gather so many of you from around the world. In the next 2 hours or so, we are going to explore, celebrate, and elevate the possibilities between smart cities, diversities, and women leaders inspiring change as a part of She Smart Taoyuan. Taoyuan is an important industrial city in Taiwan that initiated this project with a series of events and content for action-oriented conversations, public-private partnerships, and urban policy design. This is the international segment of this initiative. We will be sharing some success stories from Taiwan, listening to overseas domain experts, and hopefully both walk away with some inspirations and new connections. Before we formally start, I would like to invite the Deputy Mayor of Taoyuan, Anbang Gao, to give us a quick welcome remark.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anpang Gao, Deputy Mayor of Taoyuan City. On behalf of our Mayor, Wen Zhan Chen, welcome to the International Forum, a virtual delegation of She Smart Taoyuan, to share your ideas and experience about smart cities beyond borders. Let me first introduce Taoyuan. Taoyuan is the gateway to Taiwan, where the international airport is located. If you have been to Taiwan, chances are you have been to Taoyuan. If you haven't been to Taiwan, I would like to extend a warm welcome. We are centrally located within 3 hours flights to most cities in East Asia. In addition to our development as an airport city, Taoyuan also promotes industrial transformation through the Asian Silicon Valley Development Plan. As a city, we have the largest industrial output value in Taiwan, with headquarters of many global technology and supply chain powerhouses like Guangda, Gogoro, EVA Airline, and many more. You may not know that 25% of Tesla's components were once sourced and manufactured in Taoyuan, especially the heart of the electric car, its motor. For many years, Taoyuan has been developing itself as a smart city as part of Taiwan's Digital Nation Smart Island initiative. Taoyuan's goal for smart city is user-friendly, replicability, and human-centric, with positive impacts felt by its citizens. We have been recognized internationally with many awards, including ICF's Community of the Year in 2019. This year, we are kicking off an exciting initiative, She Smart Taoyuan, further incorporating gender perspectives into city and policy design and celebrating what women have accomplished in this field. Last month, we have invited 11 industry leaders from top-notch enterprises like IBM, Dell, GE, ASML, and Winston to form the She Smart Taoyuan Committee. Today, we are mixing the world to be part of this important conversation to make city life better and to promote inclusiveness, diversity, and equality. It is with great honor to welcome you virtually. I hope today's discussion will be engaging, insightful, and action-oriented. All the best from Taoyuan, and have a wonderful forum. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you, Deputy Mayor Gao. Without further ado, let's get into our main session. And by the way, we're going live, so I'm seeing a lot of great comments and our friends from really all over the world. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, I have known our first keynote speaker since her time at the Taiwan Parliament as a legislator. With a background as a social entrepreneur, she has always been very forward looking and visionary when it comes to policy reforms. After she was appointed by the mayor of Taoyuan as the general director of information technology, at the beginning of this year, she told me, "Hey, Elisa, I really want to do something to combine smart cities and women in tech, business, and venture. What do you think?" Well, as usual, immediately I was impressed with her idea and decided to be a part of this. As someone who has been always impressed with her commitment and accomplishments in both technology innovation and women empowerment, I am beyond excited about bringing you our first keynote speaker today. Let's meet the pioneer behind She's Smart Taoyuan, Karen Yu.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Karen.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. How are you in Taoyuan this morning?
Great. I can feel abundant women power in the since the early morning in Taoyuan from you and from all the audience come to this forum.
Yeah, I cannot wait for more people to hear from you. So let's save time and jump right into it. The stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Elisa, again, and then thanks for all of you to be here. Let me quickly introduce myself. I think Elisa has introduced myself a lot. I'm Karen Yu, Director General of Department of Information Technology in Taoyuan. Before Taoyuan, I was a social entrepreneur and later as a legislator at large in Taiwan during 2016 to 2020. And I always looking for best practice from different dimensions, such as politics or policy or capital market, in order to innovate ecosystem and help the country to be more sustainable. Today, I want to start from the whole picture of Taoyuan, our smart city strategy and the practices. Now, let's start from this question. What does smart city mean to you? Because why I ask this? Because a lot of people, most of people, when they think about smart city, they probably, especially in Taiwan, probably will think about which technology application we use in the city. But we would like to start with Taoyuan because due to smart city to us, it's not just a policy. It is also a way of life to us. You may already have some ideas of smart city, and I hope you'll get more inspired and even exciting ideas after today's forum. Disadvantaged children can keep learning after school till they learn as well as other normal children. Classrooms will be disappeared and learning will be infinity. The lifestyle of cross culture. This is a city embracing the diverse fabric that makes our society stronger. A city insists an appropriate balance between development and sustainability. This is what smart Taoyuan means. Now let's explore the DNA of our city. Taoyuan is the gateway to Taiwan, where the international airport is located. We are centrally located within 3 hours flights to most cities in East Asia. We have the largest industrial output value in Taiwan, which is more than 100 billion US dollars a year. The city is also famous for its electronics, auto parts, and textile manufacturing, with many global technology companies and upstream of high-tech supply chains. In addition, Taoyuan has the youngest population on average around Taiwan's major cities. 17 colleges and universities located in Taoyuan. Annually, there are more than 26,000 graduates, providing abundant, well-trained talents get into the industry. Taiwan is a multicultural society comprising diverse ethnic groups, and Taoyuan as a hybrid city. We have Hakka, Minnan, Aboriginal, and new immigrants. The city also has around 10, 100,000 blue collars, foreign workers mostly from Southeast Asia. Next, I will introduce how Taoyuan developed a citizen-oriented smart city. The operation structure, you can say reorganized or restructured. The operation structure in Taoyuan is the crucial for smart city. Taoyuan has set up smart city committee to coordinate cross-department affairs. Early in 2014, the first local government responsible for youth affairs in Taiwan, then established in 2015, creating startup hubs to inspire innovations. Further, in 2018, an office promoting green energy and my department, information technology, and are established. In my department, the Smart City Division take charge in planning, developing, and promoting the application of Taoyuan Smart City Technology Project. To build a smart city, the most important is the need of citizens. And our major policy dimensions include smart governance, smart living, smart industry. Regard to smart governance, we establish a cloud-based information integration platform to provide decision support information. And regard to smart living, new smart stop signs and smart street lights, multifunctional card of citizens, such like this. And to smart industry, we upgrade and transform the industries to be digital and intelligence. Like our like our deputy mayor mentioned, the project of Asia Silicon Valley, we try to build up the ecosystem for innovative startups as well. By integration of our strengths, we create 10 things in order to make the citizens to realize and accept. We proceed marketing and facilitation to the citizens all the way. There are a lot of to share, but here I show only 4 solutions to make those strategies clear to you. The world has experienced an outbreak of COVID-19. Taoyuan is the front line of preventing COVID-19 from spreading in Taiwan. We carefully manage a balance between disease control and the normal life of citizens by adopting tech applications. We introduce alert of crowds for attraction in Taoyuan, which based on telecom data and count the number of the crowd at more than 20 attractions to lower risks of cluster infection. Also, we introduced AI-enabled crowd management system to automatically calculate visitors inside the building of Zhuwei Fish Harbor as crowd management assistant to follow national epidemic control measures. This geographic information management system grasps the latest status of the online solar system, effectively carries out regular work such as maintenance and repair, integrates the city's drawings, and effectively handles complex and huge materials. This is the first case in Taiwan to introduce AR and the IoT technology into solar management and does work during the worst drought in Taiwan early in the year. Many governments make their services separated, which is inconvenient for citizens. Taoyuan integrates many services into one card, including exercise, public transportation, library service, parking information, and even notification of baby vaccines, etc. Taoyuan Citizen Card is the most useful citizen card in Taiwan. More than 1.73 million cards have been issued, which is about 76% of Taoyuan's population. Taoyuan is developing into a smart city by all measures. The city is also strengthening its resilience. The result of these efforts were manifested during the pandemic. Taoyuan applied 70 pandemic prevention technologies to develop a smart pandemic prevention cycle consisting of testing strategies, contact tracing, crowd control, patient care, convenience service, and digital transformation. Using smart technologies to improve pandemic prevention measures, build a safer environment for frontline personnel, and substantially mitigate the pandemic impact on citizens' daily lives. By actively adopting smart city solutions in all aspects citywide, Taoyuan emphasizes on citizen-centric public services. to achieve high quality of life in a smart way for its citizens by abiding by common principles, inclusiveness, diversity, and sustainability, and by incorporating gender perspectives into the policies. The brand new She Smart Taoyuan program was launched into the existing Smart City project and structure, governing structure to further enhance the implementation of those key principles. Today, we are sincerely invite you to be part of this important conversation. More Taoyuan Smart City solutions are presented in the Taoyuan Online Pavilion. Thank you very much, and I would like to hand the mic to our Elisa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. I have learned so much about Taoyuan after you took on the role to handle technology and innovation for the city. Don't go away yet. Let's bring on two other brilliant speakers from the States to join our first panel discussion about cross-border opportunities to make city life better. So, in addition to Karen, let's also welcome Mehdi Khalis, Director for City Possible and Global Cities at MasterCard, and Chelsea Collier, founder of DigiCity. Hello, good morning here from Taiwan. How are you?
Oh, good evening, good morning, wherever you are.
Fantastic. Maybe before we get into our discussion, let's do a very quick introduction for each of you. So maybe let's start with Chelsea. Would you like to tell us a little bit in terms of what you are working on when it comes to smart cities? And I think you were on mute, by the way, Chelsea.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you sound
Okay,
perfect.
great. Thanks for being patient with the technical difficulties. My name is Chelsea Collier. I'm the founder of DigiCity, which is a forum for addressing the social impact side of smart cities. So I do a lot of work working between different sectors, so industry, government, academia, and the social sector, including nonprofits, to learn what everyone's perspective is and find ways that we can align what inspires us to do the work.
Fantastic. And you're dialing in today from Austin. I
From
believe.
Austin, Texas. Yes.
Welcome. And always fantastic to meet other ecosystem builders because I understand how important but also difficult and hardworking this can be. Thank you so much for being with us. And Mehdi, would you like to also say hi to our audience and give us a quick introduction?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation. It's wonderful to be here and to be amongst a group of ecosystem builders. I'm Maddie Callis. I'm with MasterCard on our City Possible team, where we have a network of over 305 cities across the globe sharing how they use technology to serve their communities. So it's an honor to be here today. With Karen, hearing some of the things you talked about in your presentation, I can't wait to delve deeper. And Chelsea, we have so much in common. So Elsa, you've done a fabulous job putting together the group. And I'm dialing in from New York City, which is my home. So it's my evening time, and hope that our time difference makes it all the more authentic.
Nice.
Definitely. I'm seeing from our audience live, we have got people from the States, obviously, and also Canada, Australia, Singapore, Japan. So, what a great group together. And back to you, Karen. We have heard a little bit about your background and what you have been working on since at the time that you were a congresswoman and now the general director of Department of Information and Technology. I would like to actually hear a little bit more in terms of why you decided to put on this very special initiative. We have been to a lot of events around smart cities. We have probably also been to a lot of events around women in tech, women in venture, women in business. But at least for myself, it's the first time for me to see an event, especially on a cross-border basis, to put these two important subjects together. I would like to hear a little bit more from you in terms of why you made this decision, what inspired you to do this, and also perhaps from yourself as a female leader in politics, what have you initiated when it comes to policy, smart cities?
I have to say today's forum is also meaningful to me as well, because since I became the general director of IT department in Taoyuan, the first time I have to, in charge of or dealing with smart city policy. And I feel there a certain type of smart city in Taiwan. I mean that first of all, smart city initiated in Taiwan around 2015, and during the time, it's a alliance of information technology company who initiated this project in Taiwan. So when people talking about smart city, it's not thinking about a way of life in the future, but most of the time people think, oh, it's just a technology application, dealing with the governing things or in certain public service in a city. This is the first observation I got it. And the second is that because I'm nominated as legislator at large during 2016, in Taiwan, if we want to have more, encourage more women to participate in the public things, it's better to put them into the structure, the governing structure. So I start to think about how about we invite more outstanding female leaders to be our committee member for Taoyuan Smart City Committee. So that's why I try to initiate Street Smart Taoyuan, and we would like to open more conversation citywide, worldwide, and really think about how smart city can be a tool in order to achieve a sustainable goal or sustainable city or sustainable countries worldwide. So that's the probably the main reasons.
That's fantastic. And I think you pointed out something really important, as in, for Taiwan, because we have always been so proud in terms of our technology, very strong when it comes to our patent, frontier technology and innovation. So sometimes maybe we forget that a lot of times, smart city, at the end of the day, at the core, we should probably be more human centric, be more citizen centric. We should use technology to serve the world and serve us, and not the other way around. But I understand sometimes, especially in Taiwan, like it might be easy for us to focus too much on technology and forget about the roots of why we do all of this. So I cannot wait to dig into that afterwards. But let me change gear a little bit and maybe to invite Maddie, because like when I first learned about City Possible, I was like, Mastercard is a credit card company. Why does it care about smart cities? And how does the City Possible project benefit? I believe must, like a lot of cities in the world, otherwise you will not have over 300 city members. So can you share with us a little bit in terms of why MasterCard as a credit card company care about this? And how do you work with cities to basically for more collaboration?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first exciting point to make is one, MasterCard perceives ourselves and believe we are, which I agree with, a financial technology company. We don't actually issue cards, we provide the networks on which they're to happen. So anytime there's a transaction, whether you're in Taiwan or in New York City, and it says you need to pay for your coffee, our rails enable the clearance that yes, you can make that payment. Our network right now, it carries payment, it also carries data verification and other things. So when you think about that in the application of a smart city, there's a lot more happening. We started City Possible in 2018, which is 16 members. And the initial driver for why the company was so invested in helping cities and still is this Transport for London use case where you use a contactless card or your phone or a device you have in your wallet to tap and get on to the tube in London. I know that that is rolling out in some public transportation systems across Asia. And what that happened was the first year that was operational for Transport for London, they saved over 100 million Great British pounds in fare collection, which is a lot when you're a transit agency. And transit agencies are super important to all local municipalities. Many of the governments use the transit agency's credit ranking to get bonds. So the more effective the transit agency is, the more it boosts the city. My initial role in the company was, okay, we know we can do more with cities. We've done this in London. We're now doing the contactless ticketing with transit in over 300 cities. No, excuse me, 500 cities across the globe. What else? It was 300 at the time when I joined. What else can we be doing? And so what that has evolved into through City Possible is we take challenges from the network and then look at how we can plug MasterCard's expertise into them. Karen, when you talked about the citizen card that your city has, Taiwan, which is so great, we do something similar, which we call City Key, and there's over 40 programs live across the globe. Many of them were in response to the COVID pandemic, and city governments needed a way to get aid to their residents immediately so they could pay food, rent, etc. There are these really daily challenges that hopefully with our technology we can help solve at a moment's notice, while at the same time the convening and the power of the network, we're able to delve into some more deeper challenges, like right now talking about what does sustainability mean for cities. How do you move towards zero greenhouse gas emissions? How do you create a stable economy that provides economic opportunity for all to grow? Those are, I think, some more thornier challenges. So it's really exciting for me to have the space to do quick implementations, while at the same time having these longer term conversations at events and gatherings of what can MasterCard be doing and how can we map our strategy to benefit the public sector as well.
I think that's really exciting and very also innovating to hear that in terms of the positioning of MasterCard for itself. And you gave a great example with public-private partnerships in terms of what the private sector can work with the government for really, like making our tomorrow and making our urban life better. And that brings me to Chelsea, because you really work at the intersection of public-private partnership with your ecosystem building, your content creation. I think a lot of really kind of like policy-related initiatives. So can you share a little bit with what you are seeing, what you are getting involved with? What do you see as the biggest hurdles and enablers for successful public-private partnerships? I know that you have been working in the States, in Europe, and even in Asia. I think you have really this very overall view in terms of what's going on in the world. So any tips that you would like to share for both the public and private sector?
Oh, thank you so much. And I really appreciate hearing the history behind the City Possible program. We've been following that since 2018, and it's been really fun to see it grow even in the really challenging circumstances of the pandemic. And I think it's a really great example of how you can overcome some of the hurdles related to smart cities, which can be summarized in that with all of these different sectors, public sector and private sector specifically, there's very often a lack of shared understanding around what the challenges are. And I love the example that was shared, because it's a very real challenge. How do we fund our public transit? How do we make public transit more efficient? What are the true challenges that those transit agencies are facing in a private sector company, i.e. MasterCard, with the right perspective, the right vision, the right leadership, and the right level of patience can go in and help co-create the solutions. So I think some of the hurdles are a lack of shared understanding, a lack of aligned incentives, and a lack of flexibility. But I think all of those can be overcome if the right people come with the right perspectives. We're seeing so many examples of that worldwide, and very excited to share some of those later in our discussion.
Thank you, Chelsea. And maybe let's come back to the subject of this panel, which is cross-border opportunities to make city life better. So Karen, you initiated this, and I think one thing that really excited me was that this is not a domestic and local initiative. Like for this project, there's this international segment, and you from the very beginning wanted this to be global, wanted to really reach out to the rest of the world to invite collaboration and also really inspiration for each other. What are some of the areas or examples that Taoyuan or Taiwan, in your view and from your experience, can work with the world around smart cities?
I would like to mention some history of smart cities in Taoyuan. Since 2015, our mayor initiated the BIP program of smart city, which including more than hundreds sub projects in the smart cities. And since then, we trying to transform Taoyuan become more sustainable. And in 2019, we won the ICF Top One Smart City Prize. But our mayor told us that the destination is not about, it's not about winning the award or prize. It's how we can keep going or put more effort or trying to do it better for citizens in Taoyuan. So that's the reason we would like to have more new insight or new ideas from different sectors of smart cities worldwide. So that's the reason why we have this international forum and invite those outstanding female leaders from different sectors to give their best practice experience, their experience of best practice, or to help with each other to find the way together or connected stronger to make the smart city to transform to you can say into smart city 2.0 because because when we mention She's Smart Taoyuan, it's not only about to encourage women to join the smart city governing structure or to encourage female leader in different aspects. It's also about how we can bring different or innovative angles or points into our smart city project. So that's the reason behind.
Fantastic. Any particular areas, like you think we can call for collaboration in the world, given that, like Taiwan, obviously overall super strong when it comes to the supply chain. And Taoyuan, you mentioned in your keynote, it's the city with the largest industrial outputs and also where the international airport is located. So any areas that you have in mind that you think we can have more global collaboration and maybe invite global, both startup founders, investors, corporates to come to Taiwan to work with?
Yeah, I think one of the strengths we have in Taoyuan is that we are the biggest industrial cities in Taiwan, which means that we have a lot of abundant upstream high technology companies of global supply chain. But what we are thinking is that it's not only about the high-tech parts supply chain, it's about the solutions supply chain, which means that when we have the best practice as Smart City project in Taoyuan, is this solution can benefit to other cities or to other countries? If so, we would like to share with other people and see how we can be a crucial role or be part of the solution supply chain for other cities. Like we always mention that Taiwan can help. So that's the reason we are looking for opportunity to share our best practice or our experience with other leaders or cities or other cities mayor as well in order to help or benefit other peoples around the world.
Yeah, totally. And I think what I'm hearing is that for smart city, this is not only for just Taiwan or Taoyuan ourselves, but eventually this can be a smart city as a service for the world and basically exporting this as a package of total solution for other cities in the world. And I love that. Maybe we'll come back to this a little bit more in terms of specific areas, especially these days with SDGs, with airport innovation and so on. So 4 areas that we can really work together with other cities in the world. And talking about other cities in the world, so Mehdi, City Possible has over 300 city members. I think it's super impressive. You started in 2018 and very quickly has really grown exponentially to increase your footprints. And I wonder, among your over 300 city members, have you seen success stories where cities learn from each other and or collaborate with each other to really come up with this like win-win scenario for both and for all?
Yeah, I think so, Elsa, and I think it's happening even different now. Like I think COVID is obviously very difficult. I think one of the blessings of it for City Possible was that by first enabling everything to go virtual, there was no more, I can't come because I'm in Wellington, New Zealand, and Boston, where you're having the City Possible Summit, is too far. So by enabling to do things online at first, and I remember in March and April 2020, we mobilized pretty quickly. And one of the first roundtables we had was just like, what is everyone doing as a COVID response? How serious, like how long are you planning for? And it was super candid conversations about the more immediate. And I think now some of our government officials, you know, granted on where they are and with outbreaks, are able to do a little bit more planning now. And even last week, I was at a gathering in Phoenix, Arizona that brought together 20 communities from around the Maricopa County. So there's a lot of, let's say, 100,000, 200,000 cities there all together. And to have them think about how they were going to use their federal stimulus to actually benefit the whole of the county rather than just one city was really interesting. So I think this collaboration is being built on to the more immediate issues at hand. And I think the same things, you know, we see with some of our European members that are getting European funding to stimulate their economy. We had a round table in early November with a group of Latin American cities in New York and Barcelona and the Netherlands. I think it was Bogota, Mexico City, and Buenos Aires on the nighttime economy. And that's, you know, about how can you actually stimulate economic activity, whether it be with tourism or your own people, and make them feel safe again to go out and enjoy the city life. So I think by being attuned to what our members are looking for and then giving them the platform to talk about it, you start to see those connections naturally happen. And then, you know, they take shape. Some of the more like immediate connections of where MasterCard has stepped in to help, you wouldn't necessarily think MasterCard is a cyber expert or has that within our own company, but to process billions of transactions, we're actually quite good at cybersecurity to make sure that they are protected and verified. We have some of our own cyber tools, whether it's RiskRecon, CyberQuant, CyberFront, are available for our City Possible members to try and to use. So if they ever are, you know, suffering some sort of digital resilience issue, that's a much easier, like we can step in and support them with some clear action more than a connection. So I think it's on both. It's providing the form and the thought leadership and the access to tools.
I love that. And I think you pointed out something that's very close and dear to my heart, which is very often, you know, like events like this, conversations like this, is that very beginning point for collaboration. We really just need a space and a container for the right people to be together as a starting point. And I'm so glad that you're all here for that. I'm seeing some great comment on YouTube Live. Jean mentioned, you know, like especially coming back to Karen, he was saying that indeed it's not about awards, it's really about, you know, what we can do for the citizens and the people living in the city. So really applause for that. And by the way, we're gonna have a bit of Q&A at the end of the panel. So if you have questions while our panel speakers are sharing their insights, feel free to type them in the comment section on YouTube, and then we will get to as many as possible later on. And I guess, you know, like coming back to our cross-border sort of like potential for smart city. For Chelsea, you have, as I mentioned, work in the States, Europe, and have a lot of observations in Asia. And early on, we also talk about for smart cities. Sometimes we have different approaches. Like some places they probably focus more around, oh, it's all about technology, regulation, and data. Some places it's like, oh no, we don't talk about surveillance anymore. This is all about people, about human centric. What's your 20,000, I don't know, feet view in terms of what's going on globally? Can you give us maybe kind of like an overview in terms of what you're seeing broadly in Asia, the States, Canada, Europe? We'd love to actually hear what you are seeing on the
Yeah.
global basis.
Thank you. Well, and one of the things I'd like to talk about is, there definitely is a shift, and this is exacerbated by COVID and the global pandemic. But where specifically in smart cities, there used to be a spirit of competition. Now there's a spirit of collaboration. And I think no matter where you are in the world, there's this hunger to learn from each other, to share best practices, and also to share some of the challenges. And I think the magic ingredient to making that really work is the enablers, the forums, the frameworks, the conveners. And I think that we all qualify as conveners in this conversation. So I just want to take a moment to appreciate that and to thank you for hosting this forum. It allows us to talk about some of the things that are happening around the world. What I think is really important, and I've worked with cities from Manchester in the UK, Gothenburg in Sweden, Hamburg in Germany, Singapore, some very industrial cities, some not. But it's important, and one of the things that they've done really right is number one, mapping their ecosystem, understanding who is in their community, who is willing to co-create and participate. And sometimes that gets limited to just government or just industry. But I think it's really important to reach out to our social systems, to our community advocates, to our creatives and our artists, to our academics, to our startup communities. We're all in this community together, and there's so many solutions and brilliant people who are just waiting to be asked. In the United States recently, with the kind of change in kind of the social structure, we've had a lot of distrust in government. And I think some of those cities who are doing smart cities right are reaching into their community and trying to better understand how they can reestablish that sense of trust. And from there, by listening to each other, by coming with some shared values, maybe we won't all have the same perspective or the same opinion or the same political views, but if we can have some shared values around our community, then you can start to apply the technology. But it's not just technologies for technology's sake. It can be very human-centered if it's done with thoughtfulness.
I love how you pointed out, like it's really important for us to move from competition to collaboration. And I think, like one of the very important first step is to really map out the ecosystem, both, I guess, like internally within the community and also externally in terms of what external partners potentially can be a part of this total picture and total solution. I would like to come back to ask your comment a little bit further around public-private partnership, especially in terms of the right balance. Because like sometimes, especially when it comes to smart cities, sometimes people think that it's government's job, but sometimes government they have some projects that might look like what the private sectors will initiate. So sometimes there's this like really interesting overlapping area, and who should be the one driving the initiative. I think like in reality sometimes it's a little bit trickier. Maybe for Karen, I would also love to get your take around this. Like what's the right balance you think when it comes to the government intervention and dominance versus the market force, or let the private sector develop, let the entrepreneurs do their job? What do you think would be the right balance, and how do we actually ensure that both the private and public sector can come together in the most balanced and great way?
Okay, I think we are still looking for the best practice for public and private partnership as well. But I would like to share several cases that I have done for the past few months. For example, during the pandemic, we have our department was responsible for the vaccines booking website, and we don't have that kind of speed to create from 0 to 1. So that's why I trying to find a startup who has really good solution for us, and collaborate with them quickly. And indeed, they provide very good solution to provide the service for our citizens as well. So that's one thing. And during the past few months, I think that the public procurement regulation is not that favor or friendly to innovation startups. So in the near future, I also would like to see maybe from Chelsea to share which city has the best practice for PPP, or some key points that we should mention in the near future in
Mhm.
order to catch up you can speed up to the change of the world, and use the technology to provide more efficient, good service, quality service to the citizens.
Yeah, I still remember back then, Taoyuan was one of the probably only city in the beginning when the whole vaccination project came out, because you were open-minded in terms of very quickly working with a startup to really, combine their solution with part of the government offering. So it's very easy for the citizen to get the appointment and so on and so forth. And the whole process was a lot more smooth than most of the other places in Taiwan. So that's really a great example when it comes to really public-private working together to basically provide great solutions for all. And Chelsea, so coming back to this like public-private, what do you think? I know that sometimes it's kind of like not that easy to really tackle this, and maybe it's more of an art than a science and with formula, but we'd love to hear your take. And later on, with Maddie, I'm also curious in terms of, like you as a private company, basically working pretty successfully with the public, with the government. What do you think other private companies can do to also, like maybe do the same either in the smart city area or else, like how can other companies in the private sector think more when it comes to collaboration with the government? So, but Chelsea first, when it comes to the right balance.
Yeah, I think the right balance between public and private sector is really being defined. I don't know if there is a perfect city, Karen, to answer your question kind of vaguely, but I will talk about 4 cities here in Texas. One of them is called the North Texas Innovation Alliance. So this is 30 different cities in North Texas. Dallas, Texas, of course, being the largest of those. And the North Texas Innovation Alliance is essentially a third-party nonprofit that works with all the different municipalities, with private sectors, with transportation authorities, with universities, even with county government. County government is city, and then county is the next larger way of government structure here in the US, for those who aren't familiar. And what I think is so powerful about this model is that city government doesn't always move as quickly as it needs to be responsive to the innovation era that we're in, and perhaps it shouldn't move so quickly. I think that's certainly not a criticism. It's just a system in the way that government is structured. So what this organization, the North Texas Innovation Alliance, can do is be the go-between and help those two sectors talk to each other, understand each other, transact with each other, and co-create solutions in a way that doesn't slow down the process. they're further away from Dallas and San Antonio, what they've done a really beautiful job of is the innovation office in the city of San Antonio has taken it upon themselves to create really deep partnerships with all of the other public sector entities. And they have a data sharing agreement where I believe it's 12 different entities have worked for the past 3 years to now share data across each of their different agencies, which is incredibly difficult to do. And because they're able to do that, they can better understand how to serve the residents in that community. And so, with that better understanding, they can invite industry and the private sector in to say, here's the very specific way that we need help. Who has solutions? And I think they hold a solutions showcase twice a year and invite everyone from the public sector, from small startups to large global corporates, to come in and help them address some of the challenges in their community. So those are two very different examples, very different cities that I think every city can kind of find out what works for them, and then explore with industry along those lines.
That's fantastic. I wonder, whether there's something similar in Taiwan for that. If not, perhaps Taoyuan can be that initiator to really invite other cities, especially when it comes to data sharing, to really come up with better policy suggestions and reforms. And just another reminder, if you have questions, remember to post them in the comment section and we will get to that. But before that, so Mehdi, what's your suggestion for other private companies when it comes to working with the government and, at the same time, still being profitable and making money?
I will definitely address that, Elsa. And I also want to give a shout out to Jen Sanders in the North Texas Innovation Alliance. They're a proud City Possible member. And I will be with Jen. She's hosting a convening with our academic partner, Harvard Technology and Entrepreneurship Center in Dallas on Thursday. So that might be something we could explore afterwards doing across Taiwan, because there is a mechanism for groups of cities to join City Possible or affiliations, and then how we can it's the same model but a little bit even more specific, tailored to the needs of the area, of how we can work with them as a region and bring them together. So for working with private companies, I really like, Chelsea, what you were saying about how there's public-private partnerships are constantly evolving, and there are examples of it being done well. And I don't think there will ever be a point where, like, this is the epitome of a P3 or a P4, because they're also so specific to localities and local regulation and local government. I have learned humbly through my almost 5 years doing this to first say what my goal is to a government. Like, I have this City Insights platform I would like to onboard you to. It has solutions that you can use for free, that you can use for trial, and some that are subscriptions. And the more honest and frank you can be upfront about your goals, and if there will be a cost, the better. I've learned that in certain continents, or in Europe, for example, it's better to have a paid engagement upfront to lead to a longer term project, versus in the US, that's not always the case. Um, there are such intricacies in local procurement, and depending on who the decision maker is in the room and what capabilities they have, and if it's an emergency, as we've all seen in COVID over the past 2 years, some of those difficulties in working with the public sector are eased immediately. So I think in some, I would always encourage someone from the private sector going to work with the government to ask, what do you need, or what is your challenge? What's the reason we're meeting today? And then be very frank about what you have to offer.
Yeah, that's really, really critical. I guess, be very transparent. And obviously, I think, your own positioning in terms of, hey, we're not just a critical company. This is what we can offer. This is the tomorrow that we want to build together. And then be super transparent when it comes to the goals, and also working with the government, with the procurement process and so on and so forth. I think that's really the key for any private company in the world if they want to work well with the government. And I love how you brought up this potential areas for collaborations already. As we get toward the end of our session, maybe before we wrap, I would like to invite all of you, first start with Karen. like after this session, if you were to get on a follow-on call with Maddie and Chelsea, what would you want to talk about with both of them?
Oh well, those two speakers, they have really amazing experience, which can, I think that we indeed can learn a lot from them. So follow the concept of solution supply chain. In the end, by the end of this month, we are going to have a cooperation with ICF to invite 4 different cities to share their sustainable smart city strategy with Taoyuan City. It's another kind of Asia or citywide or worldwide forum again. And I would like to maybe I would like to ask Chelsea to suggest us which kind of platform we can join in order to have this honor to share our learning from more cities or with each other. And regarding to this ICF cooperated global forum, maybe we can cooperate with other platform worldwide together in order to help other cities to learn more about smart cities as well. And to maybe because I'm really curious about the City Possible project from Mastercard, because like I mentioned that we have a Citizen Card, Taoyuan Citizen Card, and I'm thinking how we can be a partner of your project and learn your structure, your knowledge from your project, and to or maybe we can also contribute some ideas or experience we have together to make this connection stronger to help the people face the hurdle during the pandemic.
That's great. I can see that we have immediate action plans already from Taoyuan and for Maddie and for Chelsea. It might be the first time that you get to learn about Taoyuan so much through this session. But I wonder, now that you have known a little bit about Taoyuan and what Karen is up to, any sort of further questions that you would like to ask her?
The question that I really would like to ask is how I can better showcase your efforts. Because one of the things that I think is the best practice is to have an inclusive society and to have strong female leaders in government, helping to evolve other communities who aren't quite there yet. And I think the more that we talk about that, the more that we showcase women in leadership, and the more that we establish this as the benchmark, I think we can start to change some of the dialogue around this sector, specifically related to technology. So I'm honored to learn about Tayud, and I hope I get to visit there someday soon, and also invite you to participate in some of the events that we do, including South by Southwest, which will be in Austin, hopefully, this March.
Great. Maddie?
I want to echo Chelsea and say, Karen, like what we can do to showcase what you're doing in Taoyuan and get your successes shared, I think with our networks is probably more exciting and more impactful. I'd also love to learn about your citizen card and see if there's any comparisons to our city key that we've deployed mainly in the US and around Europe, and to learn if you had some of the same challenges or the same social goals of how to reach disbursements and reach the unbanked and people that need identities to access city services. I think that it would be really interesting to share some learnings there.
Fantastic. I think those are great areas, and I am very excited about the possibilities that this session will bring already. And I hope that this really is a session to showcase what women leaders have accomplished in smart cities, in technology and innovation. I think, almost on purpose, we don't talk too much about, what the challenges are as a woman in the industry and so on and so forth. I think, this is a time that we just show and we just contribute and we just basically be part of the solution and sit on the table. So with that, Thank you so much. And I cannot wait for further conversations during the roundtable afterwards. But I want to first thank you so much for your insights. And I will see you at the end of the session. Thank you so much, Karen, Maddie, and Chelsea. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Really
Maddie.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you again. And next up, we have a keynote speaker from Canada, the founder and CEO of Run With It Synthetics, Myrna Bittner. These days, we hear a lot about recreating reality in metaverse. But have you thought about recreating cities synthetically? Even with synthetic people, activities, and infrastructure, so that you can run scenario simulations about new policies, potential disasters, and energy research, and so on and so forth, to make better decisions and improve our future? Well, I know that sounds like a movie or kind of like a video game, but Myrna's startup has been doing exactly that. They have won tons of world recognition with their work from Toyota, NATO, US Air Force, Airbus, UN, and much more. The more I learn about Myrna's startup, Run With It Synthetic, or short for RWI, the more I am fascinated by what they're building. Let's bring onto the stage Myrna Bittner. Hey, hello, Myrna.
Fantastic. How are you?
How are you in Edmonton today?
Great.
Hello there.
Snowy, but we're doing good.
Fantastic. I cannot wait for the world to know about your work. So over to you. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Elisa. I'll just start with sharing what a wonderful opportunity this is to be a part of this group, and the She Smart Taiwan effort, I think, really does bring leaders to the stage in terms of smart cities and the work that's being done. And I really enjoyed the previous panel. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the lens that my company looks through smart cities with, and how we have structured technology and process to really approach futures in cities and dial them forward. And this is primarily to help people address very complicated futures for when the future is quite unprecedented. And so everywhere I look, and I hope I can advance slides here soon, but everywhere I look, the future is really getting more complicated. And I think the understanding that cities are growing at unprecedented rates and they have to be ready for all different kinds of new challenges, including decarbonization, energy and mobility transition, climate shock events, cyber and security vulnerabilities, equity and resilience requirements. And now, as we know a lot more about, unfortunately, pandemics. And back in May of 2020, and I'll see if I can advance my slide. If you could advance the slide for me, that would be great. There we go. Back in May of 2020, I met Kim Taylor. She's a 39-year-old who commutes to work every day, often with her friend here in downtown Edmonton in Western Canada. And Kim was in a group of about 500 people who took part in our commuter study when early on in the pandemic, there was some forefront research that was indicating that COVID-19 could be spread through aerosolized transmission. And this enables us and as a company, and we're hoping to enable many others to ask what if, and at a really important and critical time. And so Kim wore a mask her mother made, and others wore, and could you advance the slide, please? There we go. Others wore masks of all types. And we gathered data on everyone. So throughout this process, this study, their proximity to each other, how people moved, how they waited at street corners, how they navigated public transit and buildings. And we really were able to measure and track every second of their COVID exposure over and over again. And the group wearing masks had less than 10% of the exposure to others not wearing masks. And when everyone wore masks, there was a 90% reduction in exposure overall. And so again, this was May of 2020, so it was 18 months ago, and we had already data on just how effective masks would be in the community. And this was great data, but the best part of it is that we did this without a single sensor or device. We weren't surveilling these people. We weren't capturing Kim's data from her cell phone. We didn't even have to have her sign waivers or answer survey questions. We just didn't have to wait. We could know this already. And this comes from how we approach a very human-centric and smart city approach through the creation of SimCities, except for real. So they're really advanced simulations, like Lisa was introducing me and discussing advanced simulations of cities and their systems and very complex interconnected systems. And most importantly, their citizens. And so Kim Taylor is actually one of our tens of millions and now hundreds of millions of sims or synthetics that we bring to life in different cities and regions around the world to what if the future, and to get the data that we can and make the most of science to inform the best decisions for cities fast and with the future in plain sight, and sometimes futures that are unprecedented. And to start with these, building these living models of cities, we start with their people. And so we bring together a ton of diverse sources of data. So data is often incomplete or biased or limited. And so we have to work quite hard at combining all different kinds of data. And we don't stop there. We add research, domain expertise, and create a very hyper-localized population. This is an example of a population that we created in Kuala Lumpur for mobility and public transportation. And we can complete a extraordinarily detailed and accurate, never identified synthetic population that actually represents the lives and livelihoods and patterns and behaviors and choices in different neighborhoods. And this enables us then to ask them questions and present them with new technologies and scenarios, infrastructure and policy, and watch as they react and respond and change these aspects of the city or circumstances around them and collect the information on what happens. We don't have to wait. And this is kind of what we are doing now is really this idea that we can have a future lab and make a digital synthetic representation of a city. And we can use this for all different types of explorations. We can de-silo different sectors. So we can look at everything from electrified vehicle transportation networks and charging, what neighborhoods there's adoption rates, and also connect that to people who are making utility policy and as well as even grid design. And then we can also connect that to resilience environments. So what happens and how can people utilize the energy that is in their batteries or maybe in their vehicles during power outages? So it really enables us to bring all of these things together. And you know, we got started in a rather interesting place, which was in resilience. So we had been doing digital systems for about 6 years. And this was our very first city with Silicon Valley. And we were asked to create Silicon Valley in 2019 for Itron. So they were a world leader in industrial IoT technology, smart city technology, streetlights, sensors, things primarily focused on energy supply. So smart meters that would shut off if there was earth movement, streetlight sensors that would detect particulate matter if there was smoke or pollution, and even high flow gas shutoffs, a whole variety of sensors. And for them, they were wanting to know what would the impact of our smart city technology be, not only just on monitoring and metering the utilities, but in case of a resilience event, so an earthquake in Silicon Valley, one that hadn't happened before. And would they be able to minimize fires? Would their technology prevent explosions in buildings? And that time to recovery was so important, and how would they quantify that? And so this was our first city that we created an area of about 45,000 people who were living and working here. And we were able to characterize everything digitally, from the buildings to the damage that was known about them to the substructure of soil and how it would move during the particular earthquake configurations given the fault lines. And more than that, we were able to add their technology as they would want it to be placed. And then we were able to trigger that that earthquake and watch as their sensors and devices shut off gas lines and removed power infrastructure from buildings and prevented fires and explosions, and actually calculate, given different earth movement, how that would impact the infrastructure. But more importantly, we felt was looking at how that impacted the people and what opportunities there were from smart city technologies and devices when it came to people. And so this is where it really got interesting for me, because I have a sociology background way back in the day. That's where I started in my post-secondary. And so we were able to pull in behavioral research from all over the world, as well as earthquakes that had happened in particular in the US, study human behavior, understand the difference between residents and commuters, men and women, and really look at those first 15 minutes after there was an earthquake. And do this in an environment where we were watching the data streams come in from the triggered industrial IoT sensors and devices and controls, see the information that the utility company would have, and then say, you know, how can we help those people? They're trying to figure out how to get home. Maybe they're injured, or they're in an area where there is fire, and we can see that through the data. We can see where there is fire and see the smoke and see where the gas lines are leaking, given the sensors that have triggered. And so it gave us this sandbox that was a profound opportunity to manipulate and create and innovate really boldly how this information would reach emergency responders, so they can look at and key in on the areas where there was the most damage. And then also how that information could be used and the mesh networks that were in place and that were battery powered to inform the citizens right away if they were in an area that was in danger, or build dynamic evacuation routes. And that's really where I think the light bulbs went on for us about how cities could really use these types of models to gain efficiencies and to really boldly innovate things that were difficult to understand, such as some of these unprecedented events and resilience. And so since then, we have really kind of gone boldly forward, being asked questions all around the world of our environments, and to build synthetic cities that deal with everything from black sky events to critical and mission operation readiness and the electrification of fleets on bases. We're working in some environments now where we're helping to plan and model the hydrogen economy, and not only the economy itself, but how that affects growth and density and industry and post-secondary. So, you know, there is just kind of this limitless amount of questions that we were being asked in these what if futures, and we're really able to model that rapidly and answer some very interesting questions. And this is kind of the trouble that we get involved in when we go forward answering these questions, is this connects to so many more sectors. And so when we are modeling energy disruption, you know, we get approached to model even space weather, and how that might, you know, the detection of space weather that could disrupt energy grids then has an impact on mobility systems, or has an impact on security systems, and for insurance companies, you name it. It all really becomes connected. And when businesses, for example, can't transact, that can also impact supply chains. So the questions continue to compound, and this is the fun that we are having around the world. And again, I think it's really about all about the people and all about how we model these cities as they continue to grow. Looking at a city through different lens in terms of not just where we have been and the data that we have on hand today, but how can we generate the data that we need to make really important decisions and remove barriers in our population. So how can we design and actually measure really innovations in mobility systems that remove barriers from people accessing health, safety, education? How can we enhance access for people who have mobility marginalities, women who are doing unpaid work, who have complex travel patterns, for example? And how can we ensure sustainability? So how can we connect all of these things to our decarbonization goals and know that when we change bike parking or when we encourage certain trip types to take place on public transportation, what does that actually mean to our decarbonization goals and our healthy communities and cities? And so that's I guess where I'll end my presentation today, is to really talk about how I think it's important that we see cities and smart cities as systems of systems, and that can be innovated and in a way that we can achieve sustainable, equitable, and resilient futures for all.
Thank you, Myrna. I was so impressed with your work, and it's really inspiring because, especially with the models that you built, not only can we really, in a way, predict the future so that we can make better decisions, but at the same time, because of the models that you built, even with vulnerable communities without data, without surveillance data, we can also still, when it comes to policy design, we can be more inclusive when it comes to policies for them. So, I cannot wait for more discussion in terms of what you're up to for the next panel. Before that, I want to quickly respond to, we have a couple of questions from the Chinese channel just now for Q&A. And don't worry, we have already passed those questions to the city government. The questions are mainly about public-private partnerships and also in terms of the procurement policies here in Taiwan. And Karen, even since, like when she was a congresswoman, I know that this is an area that she cares about a lot. So, we will pass the questions to them so that hopefully we will be able to further address them afterwards. But now I would like to introduce a dear friend and a brilliant investor at ITIC, short for Industrial Technology Investment Corporation, Sini Huang, who will be the interviewer for our second panel. Sini, welcome.
Hi, Lisa.
First of all, for people who may not be familiar with ITIC, can you give us a quick introduction about what ITIC is all about?
Sure. I mean, what an exciting panel we have today. I'm so excited to be part of it. And obviously, I want to thank Anchor Taiwan and Department of Information Technologies of Taoyuan City for having me. ITIC is the venture arm of ITRI, which is one of the largest and most prestigious research consortium in Taiwan. We have over 6,000 researchers that spans across 6 different labs, and ITIC has been instrumental in pushing forward the innovation frontier in Taiwan, nurturing leaders like TSMC, UMC, AUO in the process. So thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sini. I'm so excited to have you, not just any interviewer and moderator, but someone with actual real solid investment experience to really bring out great insights from our panel speakers. I'll let you introduce our speakers for the second panel. Have fun.
All right. So friends who are online, we're just about to start session 2. What does smart city mean to you? I want to hear your voice. So type in the comment box and let us know. 2021 has been a very unique year for all of us, with urbanizations, the long-term effects of the pandemic, carbon neutral and data security goals. Policymakers, industrial leaders, and city planners are coming together to find ways to overcome these challenges. So in this panel discussion, Smart City with a New Lens, we're going to find out how do we adopt technologies that doesn't create further digital divides, but rather nurture a stronger sense of connections with our people and our environment in the new metaverse era. My name is Cindy Huang, and I want to introduce you to our wonderful panel speakers today. We have Myrna Bittner, CEO and founder of Run of It Synthetics, also our keynote speaker. Tara Maroney, VP of Technologies and Innovation at Edmonton International Airport, and Miriam Rohrer, Program Director at UrbanX. So first off, Myrna, congrats on winning the Connectivity International Award at Mobile Hero. You seem like a front runner in the metaverse chase. How did it all start at Run with It Synthetics? What was the trigger?
Well, for us, it was really just watching a lot of technology fail, and realizing that it was getting more and more complex, and systems were connecting to each other and being and facing people and the environment. And so that's when we started creating synthetic realities, was around digital systems and trying to help digital systems solve complexity. And really, as it turned out, a lot of these systems were being deployed in cities. So they were in vehicle device-based systems and IoT systems and wearables and massive digital communication systems. And so, we in effect were creating cities. But it wasn't until 2019 when we were specifically asked to create our first city and really look at the city itself as a whole bunch of different interconnected systems. And then it's just taken off from there.
Great. I mean, I also come from like a very human-centric background, so I definitely share your vision in this. So I want to delve into this a little bit further and understand, how do you help policymakers and leaders like Tara or Karen from Panel One make decisions and de-risk? If you can give a more of an example.
Sure. So I think both of them mentioned, trying to come up with solutions very quickly in addressing, for example, COVID-19 in their cities or in their airports, and that's something that when we're facing unprecedented circumstances, that it's very interesting to be able to explore very quickly complex scenarios around people and their needs and their risk, and different measures that we may be able to put in place to really accelerate understanding and make sure that the decisions that we make when we make them have the impact that we expect. So, whether it's who and how we need to roll out, systems for vaccine, or how we watch people who arrive at an airport go through a very complex process, before they can successfully board a plane. How we can ensure that there is the least risk and the best process in place to accomplish that.
For sure, with the COVID situation and like crazy flight schedules. So Tara, I would love to hear your comments on this. You were the CTO at Alberta Energy Regulator previously, which similar in the aviation field. Building digital resilience and safety in real-time planning is essential. So can you talk more about your role and how you've strengthened security and preparedness for emergency response at Edmonton Airport?
Been really excited and honored to be here with my fellow panelists today. I'll talk a little bit about critical infrastructure, because I think Myrna identified a key theme that's important. Let me start, and I'm hearing a lot of disruption from the mic. Is that clear?
I'm having a little bit of a trouble hearing you.
I'm just hoping it's not my microphone.
Okay, I think this is probably a little bit better.
Okay, I'll get a little closer.
Right, thank you.
It's going to focus on a key theme of critical infrastructure, which I think Myrna reflected on in her discussion. We really always look at emergency response planning and practice. So my role is the CIP. I'm accountable for ensuring that the infrastructure, that the systems are protected, are secure. And I think one of the keys to that is the foundation of architecture, and ensuring that you have the right foundations in place in which you can then leverage innovation. Unfortunately, I think too many companies start with the solutions and start with those exciting business needs, but don't necessarily have the platforms in place that allow them to scale. And it's critically important that you protect those assets, not just through technology controls, but through practice, through business controls, emergency response, incident response. And then using AI, which is something that we're doing right now, to really look for specific patterns of attacks. So data is everywhere, and we collect that through all of our different sensors and systems. And we need to be as proactive as we can to look at those events. And we're working in tight collaboration with our physical security teams at the airport, because of course we think that the next wave is really in that meta world, in that virtual world, and not as likely to be someone coming in with a bag and dropping something that we don't want to see at an airport off at the carousel.
Right. Actually, I'm really curious because Edmonton, like Taoyuan, is also an aerotropolis. So, what do you think makes it perfect for smart city simulation or testbed? As you mentioned, you've integrated a lot of like sensors and AI into the system itself.
Sure. Yeah, so Edmonton has developed a really large airport city. And what we do is we really enable through subject matter expertise, our resources, and our environment, that ability to co-create or to test technologies. We do very much like what our first panel talked about, try to theme that to the strategic goals of our airport. So we're looking for things that enhance or improve cargo. We're looking at products that we could use in the airport for improving efficiencies or effectiveness of what we do. Being an airport, we also have a little bit more freedom to take some risk and to experiment, and we have that right size and scale that makes that incubator a lot more, I think, the right size to really take those chances. So recently, one of the pilots that we're working on is actually with a company from Japan, and we're looking at how can we do on-demand scheduling of our ground side transportation. And we're starting on the side where our shuttles are and our buses are, but ideally we want to move into the air side. And again, driving efficiencies, driving better, safety protocols. These different engagements that we work on partners and innovators and people from Alberta, we love to focus on regional development, also can provide a mutual commercial benefit to both EIA and to the innovator, in that we can both benefit from their success.
Very interesting, because I think one of the key important aspect, because you mentioned about experimenting and having the right skill, and so having that adaptive infrastructure is actually critical, and trying to test it out on a very iterative process. And so, Miriam, how would you echo on Tara's approach of building this kind of digital resilience? What do you think are the components for success?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, so basically at UrbanX, what we do is we invest in companies related to the future of cities. So startups are emerging that are building the solutions for the future, both in mobility and transportation, real estate and construction, energy, waterways, civic government technologies. And we do that as part of a partnership between Mini from the BMW Group and a venture fund called Urban Us. And so with that in mind, it's extremely exciting to see full platforms dedicated to synthetic reality and to being able to analyze the future of cities. Within UrbanX, I guess we have seen pieces of that. We have seen applications of that in the construction sector, for instance, with a company called Avir that really builds kind of a twin for a building that's being built, and then is able to analyze where there might be mistakes in construction by comparing 3D scans to the actual designed 3D model of the company. But beyond that, I think we also invest in other types of companies that have to do with resilience, but are not necessarily a digital twin. And so that basically solutions that create I think about resilience in two main ways. One has to do with building redundancy in systems in order for systems not to fail, and that's how I think about resilience in one hand. And the other one is simply by putting people and the environment at the center of the equation. Just by doing that, often resilience comes into place. And so another company that comes to mind that we invested in, that we supported as part of UrbanX, and that has to do with this idea of redundancy, is called Therma. And they look at like food chain and cold chain for preserving food. And of course, like every fridge or every truck that's refrigerated has their own thermostat and so on. But very often these systems fail. And so what Therma does is it's able to keep track of the cold chain from inception to when the product is sold, to make sure that these products are getting to us in great conditions.
This is all very exciting technologies. You know, also as an investor, I'm always curious about what are the upcoming trends and innovations in the space. And this actually ties in with our next question, because I've noticed that UrbanX actually invests in a lot of startups that emphasizes on environment and people. So how do you see it, you know, digital resilience, that concept forming the pillars for community inclusion and sustainability? If you can give an example or a startup that you've invested previously.
Yeah, I think, I mean, most of our companies have an impact angle, and that can be environmental, it can be social, it can foster community, but it can also be just simply reducing like CO2 emissions, right? And so when you were, when thinking through the questions for the panel, and you were talking about this notion of community, I think one company that really came to mind is a company called One Roof, that is basically building communities within physical spaces, starting with residential buildings. And the founders were second-time founders. It was in the early stages of COVID, and they were building these communities through existing tools, and they've really figured out very quickly that there was an opportunity in bringing that into a different platform that was built specifically for this. And the platform has really been a success, at least here in New York to begin with. So definitely like this idea of like, you know, when you really need it, you have people around you that maybe they're not friends, they're not your colleagues, but they live close to you, and they might share some similar concerns and similar also like things that they like. So yeah, the opportunity there in connecting people linked to space, I think is a really interesting one. And then another one that also came to mind. So that one is like purely with a physical element, but connected through technology. And then there's another one that's like directly technology connecting people as a way of building community, which is called Climate Base. And it's basically the leading platform and community for climate employment. So basically the idea is there's more and more people that are coming together, talent that is coming together to solve for the climate crisis. And how do you organize the supply and demand and make sure that the right links are being made in this critical time that we're in?
Right. It seems like there's a general sense of like building trust and a safer community within the startups that you've invested as well. So what are some of the latest trends that you're seeing in this space? What are you most excited about? And do you think metaverse is like a gimmick?
I think we're very excited to see how others have kind of realized the importance of climate change. I think when UrbanX was started 5 years ago, we were looking at cities as this solution for climate change and being able to live together as in kind of high density communities as the most sustainable way of living. And I think just the momentum that one sees in the space of climate tech is truly inspiring. And with that, I think also the idea of being able to measure impact. And so a greater trend towards ESG. I think it's still early in venture capital, but I think we're going to see a lot more of it in the years to come. I would say Europe is leading the way, but definitely we see it in the States in private equity, and it's certainly going to come to generalist venture capital as well. And then, I mean, we see changes in crypto, and also in how the ownership of digital assets, and going from centralized models to decentralized models. And inevitably, I think that is going to transition into how we think of how the technologies that we rely on in cities are built and who owns them. And so yeah, I think that's going to be definitely talk of the town for the couple of years to come, at least, is decentralized networks in cities. I don't see that going anywhere anytime soon.
Right. Yeah. So actually, friends online, I have one more questions, and then we're going to get to you. So you get your questions ready in the comment box. And this is directed to Myrna. Following up on the previous question, how do you see the metaverse hype altering the course of the smart city development? Do you think it enhances it, diverts resources from it? What are your thoughts?
I'm still trying to understand, where the metaverse is headed. But I think that there are some real problems that have been needed to be solved and to be looked at creatively. I think now is an opportunity. There is technology. There is the mandate and the imperative to make some bold changes when it comes to decarbonizing. There is massive amounts of opportunity to ensure that we, kind of re-examine equity as we're making some of these large infrastructure investments and decisions, and that we measure the impact. I'm not sure about the metaverse and creating an alternative reality, and how constructive that is when there are so many problems that we need to solve here, that are very real. So I look forward to, if there is a way that we could engage with the metaverse to actually solve some of the big problems today, or use it to help change minds and understand new realities that need to be addressed, and garner participation in some of these big things. But I still have a lot of question marks about it.
And what about you, Tara? What do you think?
Yes, I think it's a really interesting concept, but like so many concepts, it has to be applied to the right use cases, the right problems. Coming from the technology industry, these terms have that hype cycle, and I think we may be at the peak of that hype cycle. Where I do think there's something interesting is that enrichment of the internet, and how do we collaborate and drive inclusion and drive that opportunity to get the best ideas from the most diverse thinkers. So I think there's something there. I think there's obviously the technologies that can help us model outcomes, but we also have to remember that there's nothing else like relationships, real relationships with real people, not virtual people, and that learning together and working together, that can only be done when we actually meet face to face. So I just think we need to make sure. I think Myrna and I might be in agreement that be a little bit cautious about replacing our reality with a meta one.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think, all that hype and talk about, metaverse helping to build like a tighter community, or does it create more isolation? What do you think is at stake at this point?
Yeah, if I can say, I think it's empathy. I think where we need to make sure that we're focused, just like with AI, is that sense of ethics, that sense of empathy and compassion that only people, I think, develop by caring about each other and working together. So I do worry that if we hide behind computer screens and stay too much in our minds and not sometimes in our hearts, that there's a risk there for our society.
For sure, definitely. And so, actually, this is taking a question from one of the crowds. So, the concept of system adaptability and versus stable infrastructure, like on the surface, it seems to be conflicting. How do we strive for that balance, Miriam?
Can you repeat the question? Conflict?
Sure. So having the concept of system adaptability and versus stable infrastructure, like on the surface, it seems to be conflicting concepts, but how do we strive for that balance? Because I think previously we've talked about having adaptive system and versus, having a very resilient infrastructure as well.
Yeah, I mean, without a more concrete example, it's honestly hard to tell. I think it's very much of a balance. And I would go back also to design. I think design is really important when thinking through what do we actually want to build and why. And I think it's basically the intelligence behind being able to make creative decisions. And yeah, and basically going back to best practices of design, putting the user at the center of the equation and making sure that you're not building for the sake of building, you're building for a purpose. And I mean, it could be a user, but it could be like most of the companies that we invest in are pure like B2B as well, right? So not just that, but ultimately, what are you trying to build and why? And using design principles to make sure that you're building in an efficient way.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think whenever we're pushing forward with, innovations or coming up with new systems, there's going to be barriers, and also like the people around it. Like we have to understand how it's involved. We're not trying to fit technology to us, but it's more important about how do we incorporate the people and the committee. So I'm curious, how do we overcome like silos and barriers when we're pushing forward with new innovations, especially with, say, automated systems or streamlining supply chains? Myrna?
So I think that it's really important to, and this kind of I think harkens back to your previous question about infrastructure and stable infrastructure and yet resilience from adaptations. When we look at supply chains as well, so being able to understand how when things change, how the infrastructure that we have put in place can be utilized in different ways. And so that design principle almost needs to be there and tested. When we do a lot of work in energy infrastructure, and we look at the infrastructure that, for example, was stable before, and the supply chains around that infrastructure are stable. It was very hub and spoke, and yet what's happening now is so decentralized in energy. So people are doing things on the outside of the grid. They're plugging things in that have never been plugged in before. They're putting solar panels on their roof. They're becoming generators, power generators themselves. And there's all of these different ways that the whole supply chain, even if you look at energy, is being impacted. And I think being able to understand and play through these scenarios and ensure that the infrastructure that we're putting in place is able to adapt to what is happening. So whether that is, transportation corridors and ensuring that they can still function when there isn't energy, even for example, to or there's a limited energy supply for fueling, and yet we can still maintain those supply corridors. I think that is something that needs to be kind of understood. We need to see and experience in some way and test and validate that we have those proper mechanisms in place, and that systems that or innovations that we deliver into those spaces aren't isolated themselves. So they don't just solve one problem, but not be understood or connected or a part of another. And I would use the example of what happened with the floods, unfortunately, in Germany and in the EU recently, where they had incredible sensor networks that were telling them ahead of time, that these floodwaters were going to be of concern, and yet there wasn't the systems in place to understand, interpret, and then pass that information on to many of the people who were in the path of that. So sometimes we can get a little bit ahead of ourselves, even in automation and in infrastructure, and not understand, how we need to connect things and make some, even simple connections sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you on this. Another question from the crowd is, does the infrastructure for smart cities already exist, or is it just a matter of using software or organizing the existing technologies to realize it? If not, what are the trends in infrastructure to support smart city development? Myrna, or perhaps Miriam, if you...
I can start and then I'll pass it on to
Okay.
Miriam.
Go ahead.
But I
Go
think
ahead.
I think that smart cities is an interesting term, and I think it's not just all about technology. I think a lot of it is seeing the opportunity about how we can be more efficient, how we can be more inclusive, how we can implement policy, but also enhance it with technology. So really purposeful and useful technology that enables more for the population, for more people. And I think that's, to me, what smart cities are about. There's a lot of really clever cities who really don't have much technology, but they've just managed to reinvent and envision processes and have deployed technology very strategically.
Yeah, I would add that in a way, like this smart, we only talk about smart cities because there was a digitalization of the urban infrastructure, but urban infrastructure has always been there in one way or another. And so it's more of a matter of how do those technologies evolve, and how do we keep layering on also different kinds of technologies into our infrastructure to better manage it and so on. So I would say like all cities have some infrastructure in place, and just adding more digital infrastructure doesn't always result in better outcomes as well. How those technologies are designed, what people do with those technologies, and so on is it's definitely part of what decides the outcome of those. So yeah, I don't always think that more technology is better. It's all about how it's managed and what the outcome is for people and the environment.
Right.
Yes, I could maybe just add one thing from a infrastructure perspective, though, that I think is critical for the person who asked the question. It's about that connectivity capability. So I don't think this is about software. I don't think this is necessarily about amazing new technology, but there are a lot of cities and rural areas that don't have the basic foundation for data and for fiber networks and to even run some of those capabilities. So I think that investment does need to be in place or augmented in many areas.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we've briefly touched on, 4 spectrums, from digital resilience to risk management, sustainability, and community. And fundamentally, like, a city is only smart and adaptive because it grows with its people. And I totally agree with all the speakers where you mentioned it's not just about the technologies, not just about the infrastructure. So, finally, if you have like a one-line suggestion to all the responsible citizens out there, what role should we play in a smart city? What action should we take? Tara?
I think it's about connection. I think it's about sharing and including others. That would be my word, connection.
Miriam?
Sure. I would say create and creativity. So basically, ultimately, what we do at UrbanX is support people with bold ideas for the future to rethink how we live and to do so in more sustainable and livable ways. And so, yeah, I would encourage folks to start companies or initiatives and that they can make a difference. So, yeah, I would encourage create and creativity.
I like both of those. And I'll add, I think it's okay to reimagine, and it's okay to, kind of begin to not just assume that the way things have been done is something that we even can't question. And this goes back to, kind of the She Smart lens as well in beginning to look at cities and understand, the who has been advantaged and maybe who has been disadvantaged. And, it's an opportunity to reimagine all of those systems and ensure that when we build forward and we're building sustainability, that we're building equity as well.
Yeah, I love all your answers to this. So we're just about out of time, and I want to thank all our amazing panelists, Anchor Taiwan and Department of IT at Taoyuan City, and most importantly, Friends Online for your wonderful questions. So if you enjoy this session, don't forget to like and subscribe to Anchor Taiwan. My name is Cindy Huang, and handing back to you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Oh my God, I love how you mentioned the city is only smart because of its people. And I think, like people cannot be complete if we don't include more different voices and perspectives. And that's exactly why we are here. A few keywords that really touch me today. I'm hearing a lot about empathy, a lot about resilience. And I love the keywords that our panel speakers provided at the end: creativity, connections, reimagining. And don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. But, when we are really pushing forward for sustainability, we also have to remember how to do this in the most equitable way so that we really take care of everyone and be more inclusive. It's really, really impressive in terms of how all of these women leaders in the panels, like since the pandemic, since COVID, they have, either from the government as an ecosystem builder, as an investor, or an entrepreneur, all come in to really, like provide different solutions, really to make our world better. With that, I want to bring all of our speakers to the stage. Karen, Maddie, Chelsea, and Myrna, Tara, Miriam, and Cindy. What an incredible 2 hours with your pearls of wisdom. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope that this is just the beginning of a lot more conversations and collaborations to come. I want to thank Karen again for initiating this project so that we have this opportunity to be together to start this conversation. With that, I want to wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you all again very soon. As Cindy mentioned, if you like this, if you think this is an important conversation, don't forget to share with more people about what we talk about, share the video replay and so on and so forth, so that we can really make this into a movement. With that, thank you all again, and bye-bye.